We're just making one tweak, everyone. We will start in a matter of seconds. Playing of the national anthem of Jamaica. Media houses, you're on standby. We're ready to roll. Good evening and welcome to the Office of the Prime Minister, the press room here in Kingston, Jamaica. It is Monday, July 26, 2021. Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, will address the nation on COVID-19 related matters. With the Prime Minister this evening is the Honorable Desmond Mackenzie, the Minister of Local Government and Community Development, along with the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Health and Wellness, Mr. Dunstan Bryan, and the country's Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Jacqueline Bisesa Mackenzie. Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness will address us.
Thank you, Naomi. Good evening, everyone. Based on the latest report from this morning, Jamaica recorded 105 new cases of COVID-19 yesterday. Our cumulative cases of COVID-19 are now 52,089. And sadly, 1,178 persons have died. I offer my condolences to all those who have lost family, friends, loved ones, and colleagues, and for those who are in hospital fighting this virus, as well as others who are ill but not hospitalized. I pray for your speedy recovery. Since March 2021, during which we peaked at 15,944 new cases, the number of new cases of COVID-19 had been decreasing month on month. However, we are now seeing a sharp reversal of that trend. In June, we recorded 1,572 new cases. For the month of July, we have already recorded 1,818 new cases to date. For the month of June, we averaged 52 cases per day. For July 1 to 13th, we maintained that the average at 52 cases per day. However, since July 14th, our average number of new cases per day has doubled to 103 cases per day over the last 6 days. So we are averaging now 135 cases per day. The Ministry of Health and Wellness has advised that all our key indicators, our test positivity rate, our reproductive rate, that is the R0, our hospitalization rate, are showing rapid increase. Our test positivity rate is now over 18%, and our R0 has been increasing rapidly and is now at 1.4. We are displaying our graphs showing our positivity rate by week. We're seeing, since the 10th of June, an increase. We're displaying now our reproductive rate, our R0. And you can see that that is increasing. We were just about at 1 a week, 2 weeks ago. Now we're trending up to just about 1.4. Minister Tufton has joined us, and I will ask him to just give a brief overview as to where we are in the management of the pandemic.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. My apologies for being late. Colleagues, ministers, members of the Ministry of Health, Honorable Prime Minister, good evening to all. As the Prime Minister said, again, we are in a phase of the management of the pandemic where we are concerned about spread, and the concerns have been heightened over the past week and a half, 2 weeks or thereabouts, with the numbers that we are seeing. So the transmission rate has moved from medium to very high in a matter of days. So over the last 3-4 days. Recent weeks have seen an uptick in the positivity rate. Sunday, July 25th, it was at 18.1% with a 7-day average of 13.5%. Now, in terms of just benchmarking against best practices, we ought to ideally be 5% or below. We're now 13.5 on the 7-day average. The reproductive rate, that represents the average number of persons that an infected individual can transmit to, is a very important parameter that is used, as the Prime Minister have said, to determine the extent of the spread. Values above 1 means that the epidemic will grow exponentially if corrective action isn't taken. And the current reproductive rate has moved from, first of all, it was below 1. We went down as far as 0.7, which was a relatively safe zone in that the spread was declining. In recent times, it has gone up to 1.1 and then 1.4 up to last evening, up to yesterday, which means, of course, that it is moving in the wrong direction. The geographic spread of COVID-19 is also increasing as new cases are being reported in more communities across the country. On July 25th, some 306 or 39.6% of 783 communities as defined by Statin had COVID-19 cases with the dates of onset in the last 2 weeks. This is up from 29% 2 weeks ago. Hospitalizations are also on the rise. In the last 7 days alone, we had gone from 215 daily hospitalization to 298. And that's very important to watch because the capacity of the public health system to respond is key. Our general hospitalization occupancy at this time is also a cause for concern because we obviously need to have the beds and all the equipment to accompany that, in addition to the personnel who are critical to managing that process. With respect to general occupancy, 7 hospitals were in the red alert zone, which means these facilities currently have 84% or greater bed capacity or occupancy, with while 4 are in the amber zone with greater than 74% bed currently being occupied. 2 facilities are at the amber alert level, meaning that they have over 74% capacity, and 2 are at 84% bed capacity, placing them in the red alert zone, meaning they are dangerously close to becoming overwhelmed. As it relates to variant strains, Prime Minister, we have discussed this. We continue to send tests abroad to determine on strains that are more novel than the original strain. In other words, they spread more rapidly. And the strain of concern clearly is the Delta variant. And we have been testing for this strain. It's now in over 100 countries, particularly in countries that we move to and from fairly frequently, whether as locals or as tourists. In the US, the Delta variant accounts for some 80% of new cases, while in the UK, some 95%. To date, however, we have not seen any Delta strain here. We have sent over 380 samples for genetic sequencing and continue to do so. We have found other strains, but not this particular one. I will say, however, that more recent samples have been sent, are yet to be sent back. And while we do, well, I say let us assume it is here, because it will be difficult to avoid, frankly speaking, with the movement of people from destinations where the strain is dominant, but we are yet to confirm the Delta strain. In terms of the field hospitals or preparations to so far, and this is now speaking to hospital readiness, have included the creation of additional bed capacity through the activation of the field hospitals, Spanish Town, 32 beds also at Falmouth, that's 30 at Spanish Town, 32 at Falmouth, and St. Joseph's. 2 other 40-bed facilities are to become available. These will add 184 beds to the existing 716 beds. So we are preparing should we require additional capacity. Nevertheless, we hope that we don't, and so we're taking the necessary precaution. The oxygen supply is a point of concern normally when we have increased numbers. Just to report that we have increased our ability to offer high-flow nasal oxygen, which allows us to treat severely ill patients out of ICU settings. The number of ventilators in the public system have increased, but we remain challenged by the number of personnel, critical care nurses, to man those stations, and so we have to manage that process. Our contact tracing has been beefed up, and we are in a position to continue to do so in order to cauterize spread where we can. And my final comment, Prime Minister, as part of the response on the management and the preparation for this, is on vaccination, which I know is a dominant feature. I don't know if you want me to comment now. Comment now? Okay. So the vaccination program, as we all know, has been slower than we would like, and that is a function of the availability of vaccines in the global market. I know it has attracted a lot of comments and even criticisms. The policy of the government has always been, and this is general to our immunization program, to source vaccines that are safe, and we measure safety by the protocols around clinical trials and sign off by the global experts normally lodged in the World Health Organization. We have stuck to that, and the demand based on supply shortages have continued to be a challenge. We did, however, say that come August, we would see increase in supplies, and we are still very confident that during the course of the next few weeks, we will see a lot more vaccines becoming available, and the issue now will be to quickly inoculate or vaccinate the population. Our vaccination implementation program is focusing on some 65% of our population in order to achieve the levels of protection that we would like as a critical response. And as of Sunday, July 25th, we had administered 302,856 doses, 174,444 first dose, and 123,848 second dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine. We have also administered 564 doses of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. I know there are some questions being asked about that, but those were done under special arrangements for our athletes, many going off to the Olympics, others participating in CONCACAF competition, and we made special arrangements for them because it's their obviously their livelihood, but also they are a source of pride for the country representing Jamaica. So those were administered, are being administered. Beyond that, we have been continuing our process of inoculating the second doses to those persons who are due, and that is a more limited process, but it has been going on. So there have been some restrictions. Based on our expectations, and we are increasingly confident that those expectations will be realized, we expect approximately 1.4 million doses of vaccines between now and the end of September. And in some instances, those vaccines will be single dose. So the Johnson & Johnson, we anticipate some 393,000 doses between that time. So 393,000 Jamaicans can access as a single dose over the next few months. And we are fairly confident that the first shipment will arrive within the next week and a half or so, which will be about 168,000. We expect also from the US a number approximating 614,000. That's a double dose brand, so you'll get your first and then your second with a 4-week interval. And those discussions are ongoing. Again, we expect during that period of time. From the COVAX facility, the facility we have gotten most of our vaccines to date, we expect an additional 100,620, and this will be the Pfizer brand through COVAX, double dose with a 4-week interval, and we're hoping to have that early August. And this was announced already, so I can say so again publicly. The collaboration with the UK government, the High Commissioner who spoke to it, as well as our Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, we expect to receive sometime this week some 300,000 AstraZeneca from the United Kingdom. And much of that preparatory work has been completed. So we anticipate that those will arrive in short order and are likely to be the first significant delivery for administration to the population over the next few weeks. All told then, we expect 1.4 million doses, and the target is to deliver 900 doses to 900,000 Jamaicans between now and the end of September. It's an ambitious target, but I believe with the support of the population and all of society, the Prime Minister I know will speak more to that, we can achieve that target. And if we set our minds to it and we make the effort and we get Jamaicans of all ages who qualify, so 18 years and over, starting when the first shipment arrives, we will open up to all who qualify, and we get that 900,000 applied, plus who has already benefited, then we'll be somewhere in the region of 50% of target, given that we're looking at a 1.95 million or so. That will be a significant jump in the numbers. It will certainly put us in the realm of other countries globally, many of whom are about 50% of target. So in a sense, we are going to be running a sprint over the next 2 months, Prime Minister, something that we are not unaccustomed to. And we appeal to the country to participate. Until then, observe the protocols and let's try to manage any potential surge that will come. Thank you.
Thank you for that update, Minister. Now, the current set of measures were due to remain in place until August 10, 2021. However, based on the rapid increase that we are seeing in all our key indicators, it is clear that we need to act now. The COVID-19 Subcommittee of Cabinet met on Saturday to discuss adjustments to the measures, and the full Cabinet considered the proposed changes today. The following changes to the measures will apply for the 2-week period from tomorrow, Tuesday, July 27, 2021, to August 10, 2021. Let's start with the curfew hours. Effective tomorrow, Tuesday, July 27, the curfew hours will be adjusted as follows. On Mondays to Saturdays, the curfew hours will be from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. the following morning. On Sundays, which means therefore, the curfew will commence on Sundays and public holidays. The curfew hours will be 3 p.m. to 5 a.m. the following morning. So let me repeat. On Monday to Saturday, the curfew hours will be from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. the following morning. On Sundays and public holidays, the curfew hours will be from 3 p.m. to 5 a.m. the following morning. So let me go into this a little bit. For Emancipation Day, which is Sunday, August the 1st, the curfew will commence at 3 p.m. and it will end at 5 a.m. the following Monday. Now, the following Monday will be observed as the holiday. So that means that the curfew on Monday, August 2, will start at 3 p.m. and end at 5 a.m. on Tuesday. Now, for Friday, August 6th, which is our Independence Day, the curfew will begin at 3 p.m. and will end at 5 a.m. on Saturday, the following day. On Sunday, August 8th, the curfew will start at 3 p.m. and end at 5 a.m. the following day, which would be Monday. So effectively, the new measures are such that on weekdays and Saturday, curfew will begin at 8 p.m. and end at 5 a.m. the following day. But for Sundays and public holidays, we have a tighter curfew period, less movement time. So we start at 3 p.m. and end at 5 a.m. the following day. I think it's fairly simple. I think everyone should get that. And the strategy behind it is to limit movement. And therefore, in tightening the curfew hours, we limit movement times. And obviously, everyone would understand why we would seek to have tighter curfews on public holidays and on Sundays. I know there are some issues raised regarding worship time and so forth, but we ask for the understanding of the public as we go through this, again, another challenging time. While we have not mandated closing hours for businesses, we would expect that establishments will generally close 1 hour before curfews to allow employees and patrons to be able to get public transportation or otherwise to go home. We've also put in place tighter operating hours for beaches and rivers as follows. Mondays to Saturdays, beaches and rivers will be open from 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. On Sundays and public holidays, beaches and rivers will be open from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. Now, reduced capacity. We had changed the measures under the last order of the Disaster Risk Management Act, where we transitioned to what we call capacity limits. So some establishments were subject to capacity limits of 70%. For example, places of worship, gyms, bars that operate under a club license, dining establishments, etc. Now, we have made some adjustments to that. Effective Tuesday, July 27th, the 70% capacity limit that applies to these establishments will be reduced to 50%. Also, the existing limit for small events is being reduced. Currently, the limit for small events is either 100 persons or 60% of capacity of the venue, whichever is lower. So effective Tuesday, July 27th, the capacity limit for small events will also be reduced from 60% to 50%. Therefore, the number of persons permitted at a small event will be still 100 persons or 50% of the venue capacity, whichever is lower. Over the course of the next 2 weeks, we will continue to monitor the situation and determine the measures that will apply effective August 11. Our focus in crafting those measures will be on trying to control spread sufficiently to allow us to reopen schools to facilitate structured face-to-face learning in September. That is an imperative for the government and indeed for all the parents and children who have had a really very difficult time during this pandemic. As Minister Tufton would have highlighted in his presentation, we are slated to receive, as we have always projected, significant supplies of vaccines starting in August. We have seen from the experience of other countries, and indeed from our own experience, how insidious this virus is and how quickly spikes can occur. The significant increase in all our early warning indicators suggests that we are in the early stages of our third wave. A third wave which I wouldn't say we predicted, but we always expected that we would have a third wave, as many countries around the world are now experiencing. The only way to avoid spikes during this new wave is for every single Jamaican, every man, woman, and child, grandma, grandpa, brother, sister, to take personal responsibility to exercise extreme care, caution, and diligence in observing the protocols. Minister Tufton, I'm certain as you move around, you would see persons in the taxis, for example, or on the buses, not wearing masks. These are close quarter gatherings. You would see people moving about with a mask under their chin or hanging from one ear. You would have seen various videos circulating of people socializing in ways that can only help in accelerating the spread. Each and every Jamaican needs to take great care and precaution. We can't overemphasize this, that the virus is not a respecter of anyone. You can get infected, whether you are at a party, or in church, or at school, or at work, in the bus, in your private vehicle with passengers, playing football with friends, or at the beach. Anywhere that human beings gather, the potential for infection exists. We have two ways of fighting the virus. Three ways, actually. One way is for the government always to be doing this. For me and the minister and the CMO, who is having sleepless nights, and the PS as well. The PS is saying he's having sleepless nights as well, knowing the dangers that we face and what the risks are. To come and say, we're going to limit your movement and limit your gatherings. That is not sustainable. And we're seeing right around the world where populations are reacting to this, even though the actions are in their best interest. Another way is for every citizen to act responsibly and follow through on the non-clinical protocols, meaning wearing your mask, maintaining a physical distance, sanitizing your hands regularly. If you're ill, stay at home. If you know you are infected, isolate. If you have traveled and you are not vaccinated, maintain the 14 days. All these measures, these non-clinical measures, will help to reduce the spread. But what we have seen as the most successful measure is for persons to take the vaccines. Even now, with the third wave, which Minister has pointed out, how pervasive the Delta variant, which is a new variant, which is virulent and spreads rapidly, that persons who are vaccinated, who still get infected, but they don't fear the worst of the disease that the virus triggers, which is the COVID-19. They may get a few symptoms, but they generally don't end up in hospital. And it is rare that they have a fatal event as a result of being infected. What we are seeing is that most persons who are admitted to hospitals, both in the United States and the United Kingdom and other countries that have published data, the vast majority, in the 90s, in terms of percentage, are persons who are unvaccinated. So what I'm about to say may offend some persons, but the reality is that the unvaccinated population could become the foundation on which the third waves are carried. And therefore, I think every single Jamaican, when the opportunity comes, when your time comes, you should do what is in your best interest, what is in your parents' and grandparents' best interest, and what is in the interest of the country, in the interest of your children to return to school. Take the vaccine. Take the vaccine. It is really unfair to ask, well, not to ask, but to watch others take it and hope to get a free ride on the disappearance of the virus from the society. It is not going to work like that. As we have seen, this virus intends to stick around. And the only way that it will go away is if a large percentage of the population, we are targeting 65%, Minister Tufton. My personal view, non-clinical view, is that we may very well have to seek to go even higher than the 65% to truly have an impact on this disease. As we have seen in other countries that have had inoculation, immunization rates, we take Israel, for example, in the 80s, going up to the 90s, and they are still getting infected and they're still seeing challenges. So, ladies and gentlemen, fellow Jamaicans, friends, brethren and sistren, this is serious now. We recognize the stress, the psychological strain, the emotional strain. We heard the cries. We tried to give a little relief. But this pandemic, this virus is serious. And I can only appeal to the good sense and reason of the people of Jamaica.
Thank you so much, Prime Minister, for outlining all the measures and, of course, appealing to Jamaicans. Now, we are up on Zoom with our media partners. We thank all those who have joined us live and are now breaking for news. We ask those, though, the reporters that are online, to use the raise hand feature. Or IT professionals have migrated everyone to the panelist on the Zoom platform. So may I ask, once you are prompted as an attendee, to then join as a panelist. We will not be able to see you if you're not a panelist. So for those who have questions as panelists, would you please use the raise hand feature? Earlier, Prime Minister, I did indicate that if it would cause a smoother flow if we are able to follow all the questions asked. So I ask that everyone online also just bear in mind that there may be several other persons who want to ask questions. So I think 2 questions that we'll be able to, answer quickly and then get as many questions in as possible, we'll be able to do. So I see the hand of Stevian Simmons, who is on the panelist platform. Again, those who are as attendees, we will show you the prompt and you stick as a panelist. So Stevian, your question, please.
Hi, good evening.
Stevian.
Good evening. Prime Minister, are these new relaxed measures for the next 2 weeks an admission that you were wrong when you relaxed the measures in June?
Well, these are not relaxed measures. These are tighter measures. And no, we were not wrong. We sat, deliberated very carefully, which is what you hire us to do as your government, to take these decisions. And you hire us as your government to listen to the people. I would encourage everyone to be careful about the blame game. We all have to live. And everyone doesn't see things always in the same way. And as much as possible, we should try not to make the pandemic a political issue. In Parliament, when it was debated, everyone agreed, including journalists and pastors, not to mention people who supported entertainment. It was generally agreed that we have gone through a very difficult period. And what has been hidden from the pandemic, and which we do see the data on, is the psychological and emotional impact that people were going through. I've seen some data regarding ideations of suicide and so forth with certain groups. And it is something that we have to watch very carefully, not to mention businesses that needed a break, needed an opportunity. So we timed it, I believe, correctly. We wanted to be able to go through the independence period, but the numbers that we are seeing suggests that we could have a very quick uptick if you are at 1.4 with the R0. And how to interpret the R0, very important, as Minister Tufton pointed out. The R0 is really a measure of how people are spreading the virus. That's what it is. It is a measure of the behavior of the risky behavior of persons in spreading the virus. So, you know, if you are at a R0 below 1, then it means one person will infect, if you could say, less than 1. So if that continues, then the virus will die out. But if you are at an R0 above 1, then it means one person will infect more than 1, and therefore the virus spread is likely to increase very rapidly. And we are now above 1 at 1.4, and we're not going to take any chances, and that is why, in essence, we're acting preemptively before it gets to the critical stage, which we experienced in March. And so we are acting wisely and preemptively and proactively.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Let's go then now to Mr. Deshan Hendricks, who is now at the Jamaica Observer. Deshan?
Good afternoon, Mr. Prime Minister. In about 5-6 weeks, school will begin, and you mentioned wanting to get the students back in class for face-to-face education starting in September. Now, with what new strategy will the government be using to encourage teachers to take up the vaccine, and has any decision been made as yet in terms of inoculating even some teenagers?
The government is in continuous dialogue. I haven't directly myself been in dialogue with the JT. I do intend to engage them because they are the critical stakeholders in all of this, and to make a personal appeal to them. But I think that the government's first line of strategic engagement with the critical stakeholders, the teachers, will be to appeal to them. We are not going to go down the route of making anything mandatory, but at the same time, I think we would have to consider ensuring that teachers who are vaccinated and who turn up to work, that they are treated in some preferential way. And those who don't turn up to work, we may have to ask them to be tested. We may have to be considering what should happen regarding how they are remunerated. These are all issues that we will have to discuss. So the incentive structure has to be created in such a way that teachers choose to get vaccinated. And those who get vaccinated could not be treated in the same way as those who don't. And I think generally that is how, as a society, we will have to move ahead, especially as it relates to government. Having had discussions with many private businesses, they too are wondering how they should treat with their employees, those who choose to get vaccinated versus those who don't. The reality is, for all of us, is that we will continue to have to play cat and mouse with the virus if persons do not get vaccinated. And that is just the reality of the situation.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Our next question comes from Mr. Damian Mitchell at the Jamaica Gleaner. Damian?
Thank you very much, Naomi. Prime Minister, I have two questions for you, and I hope I'll get the chance to ask two of the Health Minister. You, Prime Minister, had long acknowledged that moral suasion was ineffective in the COVID fight. Do you then accept that the previous set of protocols were too relaxed?
No, we recrafted the protocols to allow for greater movement, greater gatherings, anticipating and understanding, and with the caveat and the condition. And we have said that over and over and over. If the numbers move, we will act. At some point, Damian, you know, citizens have to take responsibility. You know, that's at some point, the citizens must take responsibility. And as we grow in the management of the pandemic, it can't always be the case that government has to come and restrict movements and restrict gatherings. Let me tell you, it is a dangerous thing for governments to be doing, and we do it with the greatest level of discomfort. And we have to continue. We are a democracy, and it's just what we have to do. We have to continue to appeal to our citizens, educate them. Me being on this platform, Minister Tufton speaking, that's the process. Hopefully today, maybe 50,000 persons listening, hearing, will change their behavior, and we continue to speak. That's just how it is. It's a democracy. We are a democratic country. You know, I'm a strong believer in democracy. So that's what we do, and that's just how democracies are.
Very well. My second question is, what do you make of the statement by the WHO that countries should be prioritizing COVID containment over economics at this point?
Well, I won't make any, and you will understand that I won't make any comment on an international organization such as the WHO, who we have excellent relations with, and Minister Tufton is a well-respected minister in that fraternity. I will say, however, that Jamaica's policy has been to balance both lives and livelihoods. The two things are not mutually exclusive. And as we discussed in Cabinet today, very interesting discussion, I won't go into too much details. But on one hand, we are discussing the containment of the virus, and then on the other hand, we are discussing the budget. We need a budget to do the containment. And of course, the question is, if you put in the measures that are going to contract the economy, where is the budget going to come from? So the two things are not mutually exclusive, particularly for Jamaica. The WHO statement may be applicable to richer countries who have the wherewithal to borrow or to use other fiscal practices in terms of increased spending and so forth. Jamaica does not have that luxury. So we have to maintain strong fiscal policy. So for us, it is managing both the livelihood and economy of the country and the health and safety of the people.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Can we, Damon, I know you'd indicated you'd need to speak with the
Minister
ministers
Tufton,
as well.
Mitchell.
Prime Minister, what I'm trying to do is also get as many questions in from others who have questions. Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
And now, Naomi?
Yes, go ahead.
Very well. Minister, I wanted to find out from you what safeguards are in place to reduce the potential for people fraudulently obtaining vaccine certificates.
Okay, so apart from the physical card, which is written up and stamped, we do have a software, a database, which was unveiled recently, which captures, and I am proud to say, in real time, the persons who are inoculated, persons who are vaccinated. And so that database can validate, if necessary, whether or not someone has a fraudulent card, physical card. So the card is one thing. It can be verified with the software, which is safely kept and can only be accessed by authorized persons.
Very well, Minister. Can you say exactly how many samples have been tested for the Delta variant?
Well, we sent away just over 300, I don't know the exact, 350, is that 350? 350. What we have done, we have 3 locations that we send samples to, and every week we try to send off a certain amount. We screen those samples to to confine it to those that would represent an alternative strain, and then those are determined to be sort of in good shape to be tested. So some may be discarded when they go to the one of 3 locations, and then the others are tested. Apparently, this process takes a while. I've been a little impatient, even frustrated with the length of time between delivering the samples and getting the results. But I'm told it could be between 2 and 3 weeks in some instances. So one of the reasons why I am prepared to say I suspect the Delta strain is here, not normally without speak this way without evidence, is because the sample results we're getting now has a lag time of, is it 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks? So the more recent samples that are more likely to contain the variant strain, the Delta strain in particular, are being tested as we speak, and each week we send another sample. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Damien. Let's head over to Edmund Campbell, who is also from the Gleaner Company. Edmund, good evening.
Thank you very much, Naomi. Good evening, Prime Minister.
Good evening, Edmund.
Okay, very well. Just 2 questions. The health minister spoke about a number of hospitals, 2 in particular that were in the red alert zone. Can we note those 2 hospitals? And the next question, now that we are in the beginning of a 3rd wave, do the clinicians have any projections as to how severe this is expected to be?
Okay. What I had said is that up to yesterday, we had 7 hospitals that were in the red alert zone, which means that these facilities currently have 84% or greater bed occupancy, while 4 are in the amber alert zone with greater than 74% capacity. We have 24 hospitals in Jamaica, if you include the University Hospital of the West Indies. And so if you add the 7 and 4, 11, what we're basically saying is that a fair bit of the institutions are under stress or close to that or at points of concern. I don't have the list here with me, but that's something we can make available. We normally do in our Thursday COVID conversations. In terms of the extent to which the 3rd wave will have an impact, I mean, the CMO is here. She may want to comment further, but it really depends on how quickly we cauterize and manage the spread. The fact that you're seeing 1.4% R0 rates now is very instructive because there is a lag effect, which means that it could be, it is likely to be worse than it appears. And you will see the manifestations of that in terms of positivity rates, which has been going up. And from positivity rates, you will see increasing hospitalization rates, which is the real danger because you don't want to be overwhelmed. And so the health team, and by extension the cabinet, are concerned that the rates, positivity, hospitalization is moving in a direction that will see more challenging times ahead. How challenging is a function of what we do now, which is why the Prime Minister is taking the decisions that he's announcing. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Let's head on over to our first female reporter, Jamila Maitland from CVM Television. Jamila, I beg your pardon. Yes, second indeed. Jamila.
Hi, good. Hi, you hearing me? I presume so.
Yes, go ahead.
Good. I have a couple questions. I'm Jamila. I'm actually at TVJ. And my first question is, I didn't hear the Prime Minister saying anything about entertainment events, parties, and even funerals. I wanted to find out, was there any consideration, any bans during the 2-week period? And also, any travel restrictions? I know we're watching out for the Delta variant, and with the 2 holidays coming up, there is probably an anticipation of Jamaicans coming over from overseas to look for their families. Is there any anticipation or any consideration for any banning of any travel restrictions? And 3, to what extent is the government considering any community or parish curfews? I know the CMO had said that Westmoreland and Hanover have been showing increased COVID-19 figures, and Clarendon. Those are my 3 questions.
Very good questions, Jamila. To answer them, let me just give a little context. When we announced the new arrangements in July, we always expected, in fact, we were projecting that we would have a spike. The question would be, when do you want the spike? Would you want the spike closer to September or more into August, where you could have a chance to recover for September? What has happened to us is that the uptick started fairly quickly. And I gave early warnings of that maybe about 2 weeks ago, that we're starting to see the uptick. It meant that the behavior of Jamaicans as it related to the maintenance of the protocols rapidly deteriorated during that period. And of course, increased gatherings, increased movements would have meant that the virus would be spreading even more rapidly. So we put in place a system in July which would see the approvals of events that would have met the infection prevention and control standards set out by the Ministry of Health and would have met other standards set out by ODPEM. Those events would continue. It depends as to whether or not they meet the curfew hours that are in place. So some event holders may very well have to make decisions about whether or not they hold those events. So what we have done is to bring forward some of the measures that we had planned to put in right after the independence period because of how fast the upturn in numbers was taking place. So these are really preliminary measures. Come the 11th, we will have to take even tighter measures to ensure that we do not see a massive spike. As the Minister pointed out, that there is a lag. So what we are seeing now, in 2 weeks' time, it will probably be worse. If we act now, we could ensure that in 4 weeks' time, we're not seeing a massive increase. So, which is why we have brought forward our interventions. And we are hoping as well that these interventions will have the compliance of the population. They will certainly have the enforcement behind it from the authorities. And we are hoping that each citizen, each Jamaican, will play their part in ensuring that their family is safe, their community is safe, and they are not being spreaders of the virus.
Prime Minister, thank you. Congratulations, Jamila. So many changes in the media landscape over the last few weeks. All the best in your new posting. Let's go then to Jovan Johnson. I'm not going to say where he is at. He can introduce and say it for himself. Jovan, good evening.
Thank you, Naomi. Good evening. Good evening, Prime Minister. Just to stick with what you just answered in terms of Jamila's question, Prime Minister, because couldn't the results that we're seeing now have been anticipated, the increased hospitalization, the threat of a third surge, couldn't those have been seen, or were they part of the projections such that you would have more gradual implementation or relaxation of the measures than we had when you announced in June?
A good question,
I have
Jovan.
2 other questions after that.
You want me to answer this one then, and then you come with the other 2?
Yes, Prime Minister.
That's a good question, and I'll just repeat that Minister Tufton and myself and the CMO and the Minister of Local Government and everyone who has spoken, we have said that there will be a third wave. Minister Tufton made a very dramatic statement. I recall you saying something like there might be, massive infections. You recall Minister Mackenzie. And people were saying it's alarming. And that is because we knew that there was going to be a third wave. Now, let's be clear that we could have maintained the measures, we could have gone through, we could have got down to 5%, but the real guarantee to prevent that third wave would have been to have the vaccination program. And that vaccination program, we expected to have full mobilization in August. That was our target period. Because with a new variant in and all the other new considerations, you could possibly would have still seen an increase in the numbers, particularly which what we were picking up was that persons were not complying. When we looked at the numbers from the surveillance, from the SDC and ODPEM, we were seeing an increase in the number, for example, of illegal events taking place, reductions in people wearing masks and so forth. So there are many variables that we have to take into consideration when we make our decisions. And one of the things that governments have to deal with is that populations have short memories. The conversation has evaporated totally for the calls that were being made, for the pressure that was being placed on the government from the business sector, from the churches, from the entertainment sector, from a wide variety of the society that was saying, we need a break. That has gone out the window. Nobody's asking about that anymore. And so we have to deal with it because Minister Tufton and Minister Mackenzie knows that we are the focal point of everybody's attention, everybody's request, everybody's criticisms. And so what we do is properly document. And as a listening government, we listen very carefully. We assess the stress levels in the society. And I believe we made the right decision. We made it conditional. And we have always said, if the numbers show an increase, we are going to act. In this instance, Jovan, the government is acting quickly, but is acting also preemptively to prevent the worst from happening. Jovan, your next question?
Yes, I'm hearing you. Yes, thank you, Prime Minister. The second question, this relates to the Airports Authority of Jamaica's investment in First Rock Capital Holdings. Now, the Finance Minister told Parliament last week that the first of two purchases broke the law. The AAJ's board, as it is currently structured, includes persons who were involved in those purchases, including led by Mrs. Faye Hutchinson, who herself admitted that she didn't declare her interest in First Rock, including that she became a director of the company less than 2 months after the second set of shares were acquired. Now, under the circumstances, with the breaches of the law, with the lack of declarations, do you have confidence in the current AAJ board and its leadership?
Let me make a general statement because today I was not able to participate in the full discussion and briefing on this matter, obviously because I had to shift to preparing for this. So I don't like to speak when I'm not fully briefed. I have some information, but I want to be speaking on the full up-to-date information. However, let me say that the government is always very concerned when matters of governance of public bodies are raised. And we do have before Parliament a new set of regulations which are long in coming. They should be placed now on a fast track to address some of these issues regarding, for example, the selection of board chairpersons, strengthening governance of boards, and so forth. So my comment preliminarily on the matter, until I have got my full brief, is that the issues raised are matters of grave concern to the government. And we do, however, have already underway some legislative changes that would help to ensure that we don't have some of these issues that have arisen in the past.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Thank you, Jovan. Prime Minister, at the start, I did just give a little recommendation to our media partners if they would be able to just limit the question so we could follow, because I do believe Jamila asked a question concerning travel that we really genuinely did not remember, and to Dashan.
Minister,
so
travel.
I don't recall the exact question, so we could probably have Jamila repeat it for us. Jamila?
Yes, I'm here. So I wanted to ask about any travel restrictions in light of the holidays that's coming up. I know that last year, a report showed that we had a lot of Jamaicans coming back home to look for their families, and they didn't necessarily abide by the quarantine order. But now it's a different situation with the Delta variant, and we're watching it right now. It's not here as yet based on the CARFA reports, but as Minister Tufton said, it's rumored to be here and he speculates it's here. But in light of what's going on, to what extent
my answer
are
to
you
you,
considering the travel ban?
was maybe not clear enough in that what we are doing now are preliminary measures. We did not consider the full suite of measures, and those are likely to come. Well, not likely, those will come after the 11th. Remember, a key principle of our policy approach is that we act on empirical data, we act with proportionality, and we also give some notice of actions so that plans that have been made, investments that have been made, mobilizations that have happened, it's not always easy to just do a 180 turn. You have to give notice of intention. So I have been giving notice for the past 2 weeks that we're likely to come with some tighter measures. Today is the clearest indication that tighter measures are coming. And this is just preliminary. What you're seeing here is just preliminary. We will have to give tighter measures in the new set of orders that are due on the 11th.
Thank you, Prime Minister. And again, there are several hands up. We'll take 2 new persons asking questions and then we can wrap. But again, I'd given the caveat, if you could just ask a question so we can respond. I believe Dashan had asked a question concerning vaccination of teenagers. Dashan, if you could come back on and if you could.
Yes. I was asking. I know some of the pharmaceutical companies have been testing vaccines on children, teenagers, some 12, some younger, in some countries. I was asking if that would be a policy in terms of vaccination for people in Jamaica. And I'd asked that earlier. And just to follow up back on Jamila and Damien, which is the second question I'd had, was have any models been run to see how a third wave would impact the economic recovery?
Right. So on the first question, we are looking at the expert positions as it relates to vaccines, clinical trials, and age cohorts that qualify. As you know, currently the general rule or protocol is 18 years and older. There have been, however, trials done by certain brands, the Pfizer brand, for example, where younger age cohorts have qualified and are taking the vaccines in some jurisdictions. And indeed, we have gotten requests from some citizens, particularly those who are attending educational institutions abroad who are of the lower age cohort, below 18. And so I know that the Office of the CMO, in conjunction with our experts at the multilateral level, are looking at it. As it relates to the economics, Prime Minister, you want to handle that one? I mean, we run health modeling in terms of the impact on lives and what measures need to be taken. But I'm sure that the economics are also being looked at. But Prime Minister, you can deal with that.
regarding the impact of the third wave. What I am privy to is that the outlook for economic recovery, as at this time, looks very good based upon what we have seen with the consumer and the producer index showing a return to confidence, and what the PIOJ and Statin have said regarding growth, and what the Minister of Finance has said, that we are in the recovery phase. Now, I'm glad you asked the question, Dashan, because every time we put in place measures to control gathering and movements, there are certain sectors of the economy that are affected more than others. For example, the quick service sector, the events and entertainment sector, churches and schools are affected more. At some point in time, I just want to repeat, the government cannot continue always to be taking these measures, which are like a hammer to the economy. Each time we have to restrict movements and restrict gatherings. Nonetheless, there are some sectors of the economy which have seen growth. Construction continues to grow and do well. We're seeing improvements in the BPO sector and in the technology and digital sector. So there is some balancing out taking place, but the pandemic has affected economic actors in different ways, and in some ways worse than others.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Thank you, Dashan, a PhD candidate in economics, in fact, Prime Minister. So he has asked his economics question. So we'll take two final questions, sir. First from Ms. Kate Chappell, and then from Mrs. Alicia Dunkley-Willis. Kate?
Yes, good evening. You can hear me?
Yes, Kate, go ahead.
Oh, good evening, Prime Minister. Yes, I'm wondering, are there any private sector companies currently bringing in vaccines for their employees, or will they be? And if so, what is the protocol for that? And has the government approved any such situation?
Thank you, Prime Minister. No, the short answer is no. No private entities are taking in vaccines. Most of the vaccines right now are being traded with government to government. So while brands are involved, as you know, there are many manufacturers, because of the scarcity, the negotiated positions normally involve the country of origin with the country that is receiving. And so we, primarily through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, would hold discussions with those countries, and then we would give the support, of course, from health. Cabinet would be briefed, and the logistics arrangements would normally be handled by our National Health Fund, where we store, distribute, and then, of course, inoculate. The variations from that may include diplomatic missions. One or two have sought permission to take in doses for their staff. And most recently, as I outlined, again, involving the government, however, we got a contribution to inoculate our athletes. But that's the extent of it at this point in time.
Well, Prime Minister, I believe that's it. I had indicated that Alicia Willis from the Observer would ask the final question. Mrs. Willis seems to no longer have that question, possibly having it been responded to. So, sir, I will allow you to do a final statement.
All right, so this is a preliminary step in averting a massive spike, a potential spike that could happen. The data is suggesting that there is the third wave coming for Jamaica. What we want to do strategically is to keep the infections low, but specifically is to keep hospitalizations below our health capacity. We presently have 700 beds, Minister, we are at how many beds being utilized now? About 300? Almost 300 beds. And that could rapidly increase. So we want to keep the hospitalizations below the capacity. And we don't want to be overly, overburdening the health system at this time. And we want to maintain this and further reduce that in time for September to allow for the reopening of school and to allow for an expansion and intensification of our vaccination program, which we expect to get off in full force in August. We ask for the understanding, the compliance, and the diligence, care, and caution of every Jamaican. Together, we can pull through this.
Thank you so much, Prime Minister. Thank you, too, to our media partners who joined us live and also those on our Zoom call. Thank you to the Minister of Health and Wellness, the Honourable Dr. Christopher Tufton, as well as the Honourable Desmond McKenzie, the Minister of Local Government and Community Development, along with the CMO, Dr. Jacqueline Bisesa McKenzie, and the Permanent Secretary and Minister of Health, Mr. Dunstan Bryan. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Please do enjoy your Emancipendence holiday period, even under the restrictions of COVID, and please stay safe. We'll see you once again. Good night.